this podcast, we cover sensitive subjects such as abuse, suicide, self-harm, depression, and other difficult topics. We are not medical professionals. We suffer from our own mental health issues. Our opinions should not be taken as medical advice. Dread the Stigma is for educational purposes and awareness for mental health only.
All right, we made it.
We made it.
It is Dread the Stigma time, your daily dose of some education on some mental health. I apologize. Being late is all my fault. Had a lot of pain. I know, right? I'm usually always on time. But yeah, so it's my fault. Catching up on sleep and played that dangerous game. I'm just going to sit here for a minute. Just going to close my eyes for a minute. So, but we're here, and how are you, Lydia? Are you doing well?
I'm okay. How are you? I know you're in pain.
Yeah, well, see, I was able to get the pain level down, so my body's like, oh yeah, it's time to sleep. It's time to rest.
And now we get to talk about fun statistics.
I know, right? Yeah, we're going to get into some numbers on this episode. We've talked about how mental health is affected. There's my dog. In different, situations, jobs, and whatnot. Now we're going to get to some numbers just so everybody can understand how prevalent mental health and mental illness is in the U.S. And it's quite shocking. I heard one stat before we went live, and I was like, what?
I thought that, this topic would be good because it shows people that they're not alone. Like,
absolutely,
how many other people are suffering. And we have a special guest.
We do.
My friend Crystal is on today, and we actually do another podcast together called Love on the Rocks, which will be starting back soon. And I know she really loves doing like statistics for things. So when we came up with this topic, she was the first person I thought of. So I'm going to bring her on. I'm going to push the button this time, Otis.
All right, push the button. Bam!
Normally I'm not in control of anything. I just sit back and let him do everything.
Well, how are you, Crystal? And again, thank you for joining us. Lydia did say you were big time in the stats and you love that kind of stuff. And I'm glad you could join us. You look like you're enjoying some nice weather out there.
I am. I'm actually working on my mental health as we are speaking. got a little getaway going on, but
nice.
Taking time for one of my passions.
Yeah,
well, that's good.
Statistics and mental health, both of those things.
What could be better?
I know, right?
I'm a statistics person. At heart, I'm an artist. I believe like you can look at something and you just know. But there are people out there who are numbers people. So I also like putting things in numbers just to keep those conversations rolling. So hopefully I got some good ones for you today.
Well, the one that I heard, I don't know who found that one. I'm guessing you did, Crystal. The one that I heard about anorexia.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, that was you, Lydia? Okay, all right. That was one I wasn't sure. So I don't know where we want to start. Who wants to start with some stats? Because I don't think a lot of people realize how prevalent mental illness is. And the numbers, like you said, Lydia, will definitely let people know that they're not alone, because some of them are are just off the charts.
Mhm.
I'll start out that in the U.S. as of in 2021. Now these are going to be probably
Mhm.
quite higher, but 22.8% of U.S. adults experience mental illness. It's 57.8 million people. And of course, you hear the stat all the time. 1 in 5 people suffer from mental illness. This is nuts.
Because you think about, you have a group of friends, right?
Yeah.
So, 5 people in your group,
Yeah.
at least one of you is suffering from something.
Well, that's what I tell people, that 1 in 5, and if the other 4 don't have a mental illness, it's you. And that's crazy. There was some stats about depression. I was looking up, watching a little documentary earlier before my nap creeped in, and just depression is a big one. Looks like
We
okay.
lost Crystal for a second.
For a second, she said that she was having.
Yeah, she's having a little technical difficulties, but she said she'll sign off and sign back on. But to touch on what Otis had said about one of the things I had read that I found surprising, like I was like, oh, it was that anorexia has the highest mortality rate out of mental illnesses. And that was kind of surprising to me, because I was like, oh, I would have thought like depression, because, most people who are like severely depressed will want to end their life. But then, Crystal had made a good point in that the number of people that attempt it and are not successful, which
Right.
thank you. And then also, like, recovering from anorexia is very difficult. Like, your body, we talk about mental illness, it's your mind most of the time, but anorexia is both. So that one was interesting for me.
Yeah.
To read
So,
about.
guys, for a second there, but I know right where you're at in this conversation. But yeah, think about the statistics when you said, oh, I would think it would be people with depression. Think about how many, unsuccessful, suicide attempts there have been, as opposed to how many recovering women or men with anorexia that you know. And most of the time, even if they do recover from anorexia, it's already taken its toll on their body. And
yeah, there's a lot of long-term effects.
Yeah. So
I know I had read once that like people who have recovered from anorexia, like they will have they won't be able to have, they have reproductive issues, they won't be able to have children after that. So it's it's sad that not only takes a toll on their mind but also their body, and it's like, even though they've recovered, they still have to see the issues of what they dealt with every day.
So that they've recovered, some of their organs might not have.
Right. Yeah, lifelong issues, with your body from, all of that. Let's hear some of the. Everybody's got notes, but me. I have websites up. Even Crystal brought notes, man.
Well,
I'm telling you, that's why I asked her to come on.
She knows.
And let's hear some of the stats that you found for us, Crystal. Let's dive into it.
So before we jump into the numbers, which I think you might have already touched on some of those, I do want to say where you get your numbers from matters. So just because it's on the internet doesn't mean that it's true. Not all sources are created equal. Therefore, not all opinions are created equal. So it's very, very also, oh no, did I forget?
You did, but I don't think it.
I think you're back now.
I think you're good.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's super important. Not all websites are created equal. Not all opinions are the same or hold the same weight, I should say. And you'd be surprised at how many reputable publications will put to print or put inaccurate information out there. So you have to know like where they're getting it from. Like I found this one article from the New York Times. The New York Times that had reprinted statistics that were found by a survey by a company that was trying to sell a certain item. So, you know, their statistics, obviously. It
they're
wasn't
not
a
going to
real
be skewed in any
scientific.
ways.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't a real
And then
scientific
also,
process.
a lot of these statistics, too, are just the people that are reporting their issues.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't even take into account the people that are just struggling silently, that aren't going out for help, you know.
Which
and hopefully that, you know, hopefully people will see that they're not alone, and there are a lot of people that's suffering, so maybe it'll help them get help.
Yeah.
So there's a large number of people that don't seek help for mental illness, that suffer silently. So the numbers that we have aren't even accurate. Not only that, but it brings up the conversation where you hear all the time people are like, oh, everybody's getting diagnosed with something. Well, that's because we're learning more about it. Like, for example, when I was in school, I would not be able to be diagnosed with ADHD. It was just called ADD at the time because they thought girls don't get it, which we know is very much not true. And not only that, but women largely have not been studied at all in a lot of things concerning mental health, the medical field. Like, a lot of medical studies are done on men or male test subjects or male animals and don't take into consideration women and their cyclical hormones or how that affects
the physiological
or medication
aspect. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't even use female test dummies for crash dummies until like a few years ago. So like we're just starting to really delve into true numbers. We're super duper accurate. Like, you can't only say, oh, well, there's only 43.8 million people who are affected with, mental illness in the US. Not 43.9. It's 43.8. No, it's probably even higher. But so where you get your information and how they got it matters. And I think you already touched on the 1 in 5 U.S. adults will suffer from mental illness in a given year. Now, that's just what's reported, like Lydia had mentioned. But did you know that serious mental the beginning of the costs the United States $100 billion a year?
Wow.
Oh, no, I froze again, didn't I?
It was cutting in and out a little bit. So it was severe depression. Oh no.
Uh-oh. I think I'm frozen. I can hear you guys. But you're
okay. Oh. Well, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully I'm not
you don't
frozen
look
on
too
some
frozen.
like something.
You're just like a little blotchy, right?
A little blotchy, it's fine.
Yeah.
But so serious mental illness will cost the United States about $193.2 billion. That's billion with a B, dollars a year in lost wages. So that, I think, I was like, all right,
so that's like people having to take off of work and things like that. That's interesting.
I'm actually I'm in the union, and they have what's called a FMLA.
Yep.
And I'm in the process of getting that together, and one of them being mental health issues. I can get documentation. I see a doctor, And so, yeah, that makes sense. That's one aspect of your life that mental health really affects your ability to make money. And it seems like a vicious circle. If you have to take off work, take a mental health day, you're losing wages that could put you behind. I mean, that's a whole gamut of things. But I did read some stats about that affecting the job place and your workplace.
And not only that, but like the amount of money that like therapy costs, medications, going to the psych ward, those
Yeah,
things are very expensive.
absolutely. And even if it doesn't come out of your pocket, I mean, it costs the insurance companies, a lot of money. There's a lot of money spent to. Are you bringing her back in?
I'll bring her back in.
Bring her back in.
She's loading.
She's
Hopefully,
loading. No worries. It's the internet. What are you gonna do?
That's true.
But go ahead, please continue, Crystal, with some of the ones that you have found. We'll hurry up and get you on before you drop off. Oh,
we lost.
as soon as I said drop off.
hopefully you guys can see.
Yeah.
So $193.2 billion is what it costs the U.S. every year. Well, that's just serious mental illness. And that's considering that only 41% of the adults in the United States with a mental illness received any sort of mental health services.
Mm-hmm.
So less than half of the people who have, mental health issues or mental health concerns, less than half of them received mental health related services. Now, the number for children is considerably higher, but still not perfect. It's just over about 50%. And I think, Lydia, some information that you might find particularly interesting and can agree with while we're talking.
Oh no. I did read to touch on the subject of children while Crystal is loading. So compared to the 1 in 5 for adults, for now youth, and it's considered the ages of 6 to 17, it's 1 in 6 is struggling. You think about your average classroom size, 18 to 24 kids,
Yeah.
So you're looking at a quarter of that class of those children dealing with something.
That is absolutely that's sad. That's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
And then they, don't even, get the help. I mean, they say 50%.
I had read that it was 1 in 6 youths.
Okay.
So I was just using the idea of, if you look at the average size of a classroom, I'm putting it at 18 to 24 students in a classroom, that
That's
range.
right. Yeah.
I didn't look up how many kids are in the average classroom. But I mean, based on those numbers alone, you're looking at a quarter of a classroom of children.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely nuts.
Mm-hmm.
We will be waiting for Crystal to join us. She's enjoying some nice weather, but the nice weather is not cooperating.
Yeah, she said she had no service inside her house, so she at the house she was at, so she was outside.
Here she comes.
So
there she is.
Hi. Sorry, I keep losing you guys.
Nah, you're fine, dear. It happens. It happens. So let's get into some more stats that you got, Crystal.
Yeah, what were you saying about children?
Yes.
Oh, about 70% of youth in juvenile justice systems have at least one mental health condition, and at least 20% of those live with serious mental illnesses.
I did read that one.
They're pretty interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, because I know at
Mm.
the prison I worked at for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, we did have 16 to 17-year-old inmates. So, it's interesting to see that statistic.
Yeah. That, and that leads to a lot of
Signal.
oh, there we go.
I
That
have you guys now.
Woohoo!
and
All right.
yet it actually looks a little better too.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
clear.
yay.
I mean,
All right.
you were beautiful either way.
I mean, I prefer myself a little bit more blurry personally, but I
Oh,
just can't do this. And I keep turning away because it's like flipped. But I just wanted to get a better signal for you guys. So yeah, 70% of youth in our juvenile justice system suffer from at least one mental health issue, and 20% of those in the system have a serious mental health issue that they deal with on a daily basis. So, and when you compare that to, and again, these are just the numbers being reported, so maybe not accurate diagnoses, but there's about, I want to say 21% of inmates in state and local prisons. That's the numbers there. Those are the statistics there that I can remember off the top of my head. So a significant difference, but not always being reported, not always being diagnosed, not necessarily even being asked.
Yeah, so these numbers can be, much higher.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, because I've noticed looking at stats, going as you mentioned, Crystal, it is very important, where you get your statistics from. One of the places I was looking at was NAMI. I thought maybe they would have, their finger on the pulse. But that's absolutely crazy.
Now
about
I have to go get my notes because I did actually write down some websites.
Oh, there you
for
go.
people to check out just in case they wanted to see. So I go get my notes now.
I will touch on while Crystal is going to get her notes. I know we had mentioned it backstage before we had started the show. Now, looking through all this, I would have thought that depression would have been like the number one mental health issue that people were suffering from. And, as Crystal said before we had gotten on, it's actually more people actually suffer from anxiety than any other mental illness.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So actually, the number of people with anxiety, when you look at the millions of adults that are impacted by mental illness, which is, I mean, you're looking at, let's see, 1 in 5. So 43.8 million people suffer with mental illness, and about 40 million of them are impacted by some sort of anxiety disorder at some point within that year. Now, that's not to say that it's not also paired with something else, because anxiety comes alone. Usually brings a couple other friends to the party.
Sure. No, it always does.
Yeah. But it has the highest percentage as far as when you're looking at, okay, is it anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, substance abuse disorders, which, again, that is also a hot topic because some people say, well, that is a mental health issue, and some people say it is not a mental health issue. So
what the substance abuse, some say it is not a mental health. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that I know that debate, because it's like, oh, well, you choose to start to have that first drink, or you choose to start having that first drug. So it's not like, for depression, your neurons and everything, like that just happens to you, or you had a traumatic experience that you had no control over. You So people debate that, oh, well, you chose to start doing drugs, you chose to start drinking, so they don't put it in the classification as a mental illness. So yes, I have heard that debate.
Yeah. Cody Vincent chimed in real quick on anxiety. Anxiety stems from your fight or flight. Yes. Since there is no need to use that instinct like we do, it evolved into something else.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
So there isn't just fight or flight. There is flight, fight, freeze, or fawn. So there
Freeze. Yep.
fawn. So there's 4 options there, but we still do use that response. Like, it still does have a purpose. It's just not being used in the same way that it was back when we were cavemen. So, like, no, we're not running from, wild animals and out hunting, for our lives, but people still experience trauma, and it's still needed. But unfortunately, some people's brains just aren't wired the same, and their anxiety is going all the time. Or it could be something small that sets it off, or it could just be a bunch of other little things that put them in a high anxiety mode, and then that one little thing just tips the scale. So a lot of different. But anxiety is the number one. But there's also more than just like a generalized anxiety disorder. So there's a couple other disorders that will get lumped in with that anxiety as far as the numbers go. So, I would say delve into that a little bit more research wise if you really want to break down that percentage. I think it was somewhere around like 16.8% or something like that. But some good websites, Otis, because you were talking about what websites you were looking at. NAMI is good. So that's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. That's NAMI.org. That is a good site to check out. Also, the National Institute of Mental Health, which is NIMH.nih.gov. Or you can always check out CDC.gov. They've got lots of statistics there for you to check out too. And that's not to say that other places don't have reliable information. You just have to vet it and check where they're getting it. That's all.
Yeah, because they do vary. The different sites that I was looking at, one person would say just saying you like 2%, another one would say 2.5 or 3%, or even quite larger or quite smaller.
I think it's depending on when their stats are from. So like originally when I had started researching, it had said that it was 46.6 million people were suffering, adults were suffering. But then when I saw the 2021 statistics, it was up to 51 million. So, and again, it's like Crystal had said earlier, like more people are getting diagnosed than in the past. And it's because we're learning more about these things and more of the things to see that, oh yeah, that's a sign of that. So
yeah. Okay, go.
I feel like I cut Crystal off for something, and I'm sorry.
No, that is like completely accurate. And it's like, oh well, like you could say, oh, more people are being diagnosed with autism than ever before. That's always been around. It's like, yeah, well, okay, Grandpa Paul and his train collection, I'm sure would be diagnosed as autistic nowadays. Like, it just wasn't a thing that people were looking for back then. Or, we're learning more and we're evolving as a society. The conversations around mental health are happening more often. There's more sources out there. So you're going to see these numbers keep climbing. And that's not to say that, things are getting worse. It's just that people are coming forward and being honest.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that. I always thought
we lost her.
She's playing peekaboo.
I know. I feel bad. I appreciate that she's going through all this for us.
We're playing peekaboo here.
I keep freezing on you.
That's okay.
I think that's a little bit better.
We'll deal with it. No worries.
Yeah. so we said that anxiety was the number one mental health disorder. I was surprised to see that schizophrenia is actually the lowest. And what I had read, it was actually less than 1% of all mental illnesses reported are schizophrenia, which was kind of interesting to me because, like, when we think back to the episode we did of mental health in pop culture and media, I would say schizophrenia is like heavily in media.
Yeah, in movies, it's
Yeah.
portrayed in a lot of movies. Yeah.
Obviously, media reflects real life. So I hope people are picking up on the sarcasm I was throwing down there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is kind of interesting that it only makes up less than 1% of the total of mental health illnesses that are reported.
That are reported. You got to keep that in mind while we go through these stats, people that are reported. So while we have you here locked and loaded,
Yeah.
Crystal, keep going for us. What else did you come up with?
So actually, the U.S. breakdown now, as far as schizophrenia is concerned, it's actually hitting a 1% mark. But on that topic, you want to talk about why it's portrayed so much, yet it just has a smaller number than everything else. It's because it's flashy and it's something that can be sold and packaged, and that's not even a representation. So Hollywood has done a huge injustice to those who suffer from mental illness, because it's also been presented to us in such a way that we think, well, I don't have that because I don't act like that, when in reality that's not at all like an accurate representation of somebody who would actually suffer from that. So, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of like the most jarring.
Usually on like the Law and Orders, like the crime shows, I found that those are the shows that typically showed schizophrenia the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that, and borderline personality disorder (BPD) that has been represented in shows like that, crime TV shows. And I see it a lot. I watch a lot of true crime, and they'll say, well, this person was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. So people, hear that and they think, oh, I can't have borderline personality disorder, or that person has BPD, they're going to go out and shoot up their family. No, that's not quite how it works, because I've been diagnosed with it since, I was like 26. So that is very, very good point. Misrepresentation. Thank you, Hollywood.
It's all Hollywood's fault. One, actually, I'm about to show my true nerdiness right now. One representation via Hollywood that I was actually pretty proud of, and I don't know if they did it on purpose or if it was the actress's portrayal. And I don't know if they're just trying to present her as not being neurotypical, but do you guys watch House of the Dragon?
No. I keep like telling myself I need to get into that series because it seems like, I love Harry Potter, so we're like we're in the fantasy world. But so what character?
Her name is Helena. Now they haven't made it clear. So sometimes the series will divert from the books or like the lore that's already been written about the characters. But like, as I watch her throughout the series, the actress, she does an amazing job. I wish I knew her name off the top of my head, but I don't, and I apologize. However, she's presenting this character as not being neurotypical, and in the most recent episode, the way that they portrayed her becoming overwhelmed and having these sensory issues, and the way they showed it on camera, I was like, good job. Like, that feels like a more accurate portrayal of somebody who might be on the spectrum, experiencing that what we refer to as like an overwhelm, you know. And I had a pretty proud moment. I was like, all right, I'm like, my fandom's doing good.
Yeah,
Not to say that everything else here is
sometimes
good.
they get it right. Sometimes they get it right, and they do portray an accurate portrayal of a certain illness. I think probably more times not than they do, but there is a handful out there. So it's good to know that at least if you're watching House of Dragons or whatever it is, I don't get into it, so I don't know. Yeah, that's awesome.
Good. It's so good.
Uh,
But yeah, she had a sense of overload, and then rather than showing like a hyperventilating, rocking back and forth, anxious episode, they showed her just shutting down and doing the freeze, and just through, which I thought was also super important that they did a really good job with. So kudos to them. But yeah, so Hollywood kind of sucks as far as how they portray things, but another piece of info I got for you, a couple more numbers, is that 75% of mental illnesses will begin by the age of 24. So odds are you can be diagnosed by the time you are 24. And about 50% of lifetime mental illnesses will begin by 14. So some super serious ones will begin by 14, or, you know, if you are, you know, seeking treatment, seeking assistance. I haven't seen, okay, Isaac, I have not seen Don't Hate Me, No Country for Old Men. I know it's supposed to be fantastic. Yeah, I have to see that.
Most accurate.
That's interesting.
It's on my.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But you were saying, Crystal?
But yeah, so 75% of people can be diagnosed by age 24. And when you consider that the brain isn't fully formed until 25, that kind of makes sense. And there's a lot of research out now that says people who are not neurotypical, their brains actually take even longer. So they'll take up to like age 30. That's just some new research. I haven't gotten too much into it, but it has come up, and I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense when you think about it. So still got to get into that, but got to check those sources. And
yeah, you know, the childhood trauma. Let's see, Elias.
Read the book. Cormac McCarthy is a good representation, he's saying.
Okay.
But you know, an interesting thing that I read was that people that suffer from depression have a 40% higher risk of developing cardiovascular and metabolic diseases than the general population.
Yes. So a lot of people go to the your thoughts have power. The words have power, and it's very true. Like if you tell your body like you're shutting down, it's gonna shut down. But it is also important, I think, and like again, I'm not a doctor, I just do research for the everyday person. You know, giving yourself sick days is okay. Like I can't explain how many times I've had the conversations with friends like, you're in a bad mood, you're in a bad place mentally, take a sick day. Like treat yourself like you're sick. Don't go do chores and stuff. Like sleep in, drink some water, have some soup, be nice to yourself, take a bath, like get yourself right, take time for yourself. Like that is so important to do.
Yes.
It's an illness like any other illness. Like treat it like it's strep throat.
That is probably that is a great point, because with this stigma, it is, oh, I can't see it, so it's not, it doesn't really affect you, just get over it type deal,
which is surprising because depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. So you think about, oh, it's an invisible illness, but yet it's the number one thing that is I can't say it, but is causing people to be disabled and not function in their regular lives.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, as you mentioned, Crystal, the effects that it has on your body, and I think you brought it up slightly, Lydia. The effects, um, with more, heart disease and more, all of these things. It does play a toll in your body. So that's great advice. Treat yourself. If you're going to take a mental health day, treat yourself like you have the flu. Like you said, lay in bed, do whatever needs to be done, because self-care is very, very important when it comes to this. You'd be surprised by, getting
There
up and
isn't manicures and face masks. Like
right.
that's the other misconception is like sometimes self-care looks like taking a bed rot day or just taking a day to clean up and get organized or to play catch up on all the things that are weighing down on you that week, whatever the case may be. Self-care isn't always manicures and face masks, so that would be nice.
Sometimes it's just getting up. Like I know I suffer from depression, and so I've read up on it. And sometimes you just, for days on end, you can't get out of bed, so you're not showering, you're not doing these things. And one of the biggest things it has said is just go take a shower. If you are in that state,
Yeah.
go take a shower and change your pajamas. Even if you're going into another pair of pajamas, it's going to help you.
Yeah. You will feel better. It is crazy. Just going and taking, a shower, and you come out and you're like, oh, I'm clean. I feel like I've done something.
Right?
Yeah, unbelievable. I would have thought, as we mentioned, anorexia having the highest mortality rate.
I think
I
because
can
it just causes so many parts of your body to shut down.
just shut down. Yeah, I never thought of that, but when it comes to, all right, let's say BPD has one of the highest suicide rates, and a lot of it is stems from what they call accidental suicide, where you were cutting or you were doing something destructive, and it does in fact take your life, even though you may have not meant to. You were just getting it out.
I think that's where like the substance abuse comes in too.
Yes, which it did for me. What else do you have interesting for us, Crystal?
So another statistic which I found quite a bit alarming, because I was looking at, okay, so less than half of the people who suffer from mental illness are actually receiving mental health related services. If you break it down by exactly who is receiving mental health services, you'll see women will receive it more than men, because they're more than likely to talk about it more so than men will. But also, if you break it down by race, African American and Hispanic Americans will seek help half the amount of times that a Caucasian person will. And then if you look at Asian Americans, it's about a third of the amount. So some people
which, if you look at Asian culture, but I mean, like, if you look at Asian culture, like they're very strict on everything. So I feel like them going for help would be very difficult just based on their culture.
Yeah. So there is the conversation of is it cultural, or is it that these services aren't available in, specific neighborhoods, or is it that those people are affected more? So there's a lot of conversations to be had around that point about the amount of people when you break it down by race, that are even seeking assistance. Is it that they don't have the places to go, that they're more adversely affected, which the numbers will show that they tend to be, but again, it's who's speaking up. And really, guys, until recently, it's been a very taboo thing for people to talk about.
Yeah.
And like, it's still very touchy, and I really, like, I wish it wasn't, because there are so many good conversations to be had. And I feel like, when you're able to just be honest and open about things, you're able to be happier, and to get through them a little bit easier when people know that you're suffering, from something or dealing with something. People will operate off of empathy a lot easier than most would imagine, because a lot of people operate without it otherwise. But yeah, so as these conversations happen more, I think that, let's see.
Tammy, I'm so sorry that you had that happen. I hope you're in a better spot now.
Oh, Tammy, I'm very sorry to hear that. Yeah, I have not heard that. I've heard about that song.
Yeah, I have
Now I
too.
have to go listen to it.
It is a good song.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So eye contact is a huge thing, as far as communicating in different cultures. Like some cultures, like if you're being spoken to by an adult, like being scolded, like you look at them, or they'll be offended. Or in other cultures that you don't look at them, you like look at your shoes, like, so I mean, culture does play a part in it, but I think it's kind of a combination of everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Speaking on the culture part, I was watching some videos earlier, and they were talking about Japan in particular, and their culture goes back to like the samurais, where it was considered honorable,
to commit suicide. Yeah.
to take your own life. So I guess that has ingrained itself too into their culture. So that could be a question of, okay, is it culturally accepted in certain backgrounds or whatever, the demographic, but or is there just, like you said, not enough resources to accommodate?
Well, if anybody needs a resource, you can call or text 988
Right down there at the
for
bottom.
help. So even if you can't go to therapy, if you just you need someone to talk to in that moment, call or text
I've
988.
used it. It works.
Yeah, 988 is a great resource. It's the new, it could be 741-741. That's now 988. It'll direct you there. But also, when you're talking about getting help or seeking help, some people just can't do like the in-person therapy. That might be too much for them. Nowadays, teletherapy
because of COVID. That's I feel like that's one of the number one things to come out of COVID.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's great, let me tell you. That is something good that I think we got out of that whole mess.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for it. And I think that has opened up therapy to a lot more people than would have sought it otherwise. So
especially if you're dealing with anxiety, you don't even have to leave the house. You just have to log into your computer, and that's awesome.
Exactly. Like if that's your chosen mode of communication, sometimes it helps to be faceless. But there's also even apps like you can text with a therapist. So that's also, an option. There's all sorts of, there's also now more therapy programs being offered and being covered by workplaces than ever before. So I would also say, like, check with your workplace. They may not offer like, we're gonna, cover X amount. I'm not talking, money wise, but they may have like chosen providers, or they may offer resource material to help you find a therapist that works for you.
My
and
job.
I will say,
my job.
Yeah, finding a therapist isn't necessarily a one and done either. So
yeah, sometimes you don't fit.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you gotta try on a couple glass slippers until you find the one that's yours.
It's also the same with medications. Like it some people, that are dealing with these mental illnesses, they're like, oh, well, the medication doesn't work. It's going to take you a few different ones to find one that will help you. And if anybody is struggling with medications, there is actual genetic testing that you can do. That will show you what medications your body will respond to the best. So if that's a route anybody needs to take, there is that option.
And don't get discouraged, because I think, Lydia, you mentioned, it could take up to 6 therapists before you find the right one. Don't give up. Reggie said it earlier, I began therapy this year at 45 years old. Hey, I'm turning 52 next month, and just now have found the right combination of medicine. I put the bottle down last year. Doesn't matter how old you are, buddy. Just, the fact that you took that step is great. So, good luck on your journey there, Red Jet.
So back to numbers wise.
Numbers.
So I believe these numbers are based on 2021. So it says that suicide is the 12th leading cause of death overall in the United States. And then it goes to say that, 46% of the people that did take their own life had a diagnosed mental health condition. But then it goes on to say that 90% of the people who did take their life, their family members and friends said that they were showing signs of suffering from these disorders. And it could be something that, they never went to deal with it. So that, it's quite sad that it gets to that point. And then
that's
even
part of why getting a diagnosis is so important. People are like, oh, why are you so obsessed with getting a diagnosis? Because it helps to give you a reason why things are happening, not just that you're a failure.
Exactly.
Wrong with you, like there's something else going on. So seeking help and getting that diagnosis is super important, and the earlier you can get it, the better, because if 50% of people with serious mental illness are showing signs by the time they're 14 years old, well, that's a lot of lifespan there that can be affected. And better just having a diagnosis.
Yeah,
like think about going through a majority of your young adult life just thinking there's something wrong with you. It's you. It's you're wrong. You were made wrong. You were raised wrong. Whatever the case. Whereas you find out when you get older, like, oh, it was nothing I could have controlled in the first place. Look at that. I shouldn't have stressed so much. Like how much better would it be, and how much more could you like yourself? If it's not you, it's your brain.
It's an onus, and that's exactly what happened. To myself. With years and years and years, I was misdiagnosed. And it compounds if you don't catch it in time, just like a physical illness or whatnot. Just imagine breaking your foot and just not going to the doctor. Think about all the problems you're going to have later on because you did not take care of that. And it's really the same thing. I don't know if that was a good analogy, but it's really the same thing, because it will compound, and you start thinking, like you said, that it's me. Why doesn't everybody, why don't I have friends? Why do people keep, it's me.
I still ask myself that, and I'm 35.
So understanding that it is not you. You are not alone. And getting a diagnosis. I have a self-identity issue. And getting the diagnosis let me know, it almost gave me a sense of identity, which could be dangerous because you don't want your disorder, your illness to,
define you,
right? But it did let me know, it did make me understand my actions and why things were happening the way they were. It wasn't just because I was an asshole. It was because there were certain things going on. And it does absolutely help. In my case, it helped. I did tons of research looking into, wow, This is why I did that. I wasn't an asshole sometimes, maybe, but for the most part, for the most part, it was what was going on up here that wasn't dealt with. So anybody who is starting, like Reggie, anybody who's starting, therapy, kudos to you. Get in there and figure out because it's going to be, a lifelong fight, at least, for me. I mean, it's a battle every day, but it's so worth it.
And not only that, but they say that children who go undiagnosed or don't receive treatment or an official diagnosis are twice as likely to become depressed or suffer from other, mental illnesses. So, not checking and doing due diligence right at the beginning is going to compound the issue, and then it just gets worse. Like there are a lot of people who find out that they are high functioning ADHD, but have been masking with anxiety most of their lives. But it's not until that anxiety gets treated that they're like, oh wait, there's really a different problem.
Right.
Well, that you mentioned that, and because we had talked about women versus men being studied, I believe it's ADHD. Severe depression masks as ADHD in women. Like that is a specific, and that's not like for men, like that for women, and I don't know if it's because, we have our thing once a month or whatever, but that's, because you're thinking, oh, I'm just depressed all the time, but it could really be something else. And we lost Crystal for a little bit. So hopefully she's able to pop back on, but I don't have specific numbers for this, but for those people that have taken their lives or attempted to take their lives, women are a higher percentage of people that attempt, while men are a higher percentage of those that are actually successful.
Yeah.
And this is because men tend to choose ways that are almost guaranteed to get the job done. Like men are more likely to, use a weapon compared to a woman, while women tend to go towards the route of, overdosing on pills or things like that. So it's like women are trying more, but men are getting the quote unquote job done more. Sad to say. So we got Crystal back.
And we got a different background.
We're trying to get a third place. But I didn't want to just leave you guys at that point.
Yeah.
So much of it.
Yeah, because if you're not diagnosed, I know I had a problem with drinking for a while after an injury I had, because it was like, oh, well, if I'm drunk, I'm not in pain. But I have come to realize that is you're only not in pain for a little bit when the next day it's still there.
Yeah. I did
this might be significantly more.
Right.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I self-medicated for years, developed a dependency on alcohol because it numbed me out. I wasn't thinking about it at the time. Of course, that did not work out very well. You pour alcohol on top of a mental health issue, and it's gasoline on the fire. But I've always told my wife, as my drinking's got out of hand, I've always told her, if I could just deal with the issues in my head, quitting drinking won't be a problem. And it wasn't. Ironically enough, I had to take no medications. I didn't have any withdrawal symptoms. I got this taken care of, and the rest just kind of fell in line.
And that's, like Crystal had said, the power of thought.
Yeah.
So some people will say, like, if you are suffering, if you just try to have positive thoughts throughout the day, or if you put positive notes up that you're constantly seeing, you can try and like rewire your brain. Obviously, it's not going to work for everyone, but it's something that it's maybe a little something that somebody is suffering that can use to their advantage. So,
yeah, mind over matter. That's right. If you don't mind, it don't matter.
Have you guys heard the like Snoop Dogg Words of Affirmation song?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it was originally meant for kids, but I'm like, I can jam out to this every morning. So we're talking about how like your words have power.
mm-hmm.
Google it. It is the cutest thing.
Can I just say that like Snoop Dogg's arc in this life is probably the most insane I've ever, and I had this conversation literally last week with someone because I'm just like, the Snoop Dogg we were introduced to,
yeah,
compared to the Snoop Dogg we have now.
Yeah.
I mean, love both versions of the guy, but just the character arc,
I love it.
It's insane.
And then if somebody calls him out on it, like someone, I don't even know who it was. It was a guy who was in the rap scene, I guess, was like, oh yeah, like he's not a real gangster anymore. And then Snoop Dogg, his response was perfect. He's like, yeah, that's the point. That's
right.
Why we do all this. So I'm not out on the streets anymore. I'm a millionaire. I don't have to mess with that stuff. Like,
he's got a cookbook. He's hanging out with Martha Stewart. Like,
I mean, he's a grandfather, ain't he?
Yeah.
He's a grandfather.
He's a grandpa. Like, Snoop Dogg's a grandpa?
Right. I mean, people get older. They stop doing all of the dumb shit that they did. They get, they get better. And that's the point, man. To, progress. Get better.
Yeah, as long as you're making progress, it doesn't matter how little that progress is, you're making progress.
Yeah. I feel you there, Rich. Yeah, that's enough to put your age into perspective. Snoop Dogg, grandpa.
I mean, well, and when you think about it, like, so he came around in late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the amount that he's done in 30 some, like, kudos to you, Snoop Dogg.
And he's never served time.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Martha Stewart has.
Yeah,
right,
Martha Stewart, a baddie.
But
I mean, first of all, Martha Stewart's a baddie. But like, how salty would you be as Martha Stewart that you did time for something that like our Congress just does out in the open every day now?
Right.
Yeah.
Or, oh man, if I were her,
but she handled it.
Books. She did.
It didn't affect her. She's still, so good job for her. She
came out in better standing, right? Like, because everybody's like, she's credible now for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
She knows what bad sheets are.
She has experienced them and she has made them better. So we can listen to her.
Martha got street cred now. That's it. Martha's more gangster than Snoop Dogg, but okay, all right.
It happens. It's the people you least expect.
I know, right?
Always quiet ones.
But as we approach the end of this episode, I want to go back to that first statistic that Otis had said, that 1 in 5 adults is suffering. So for me, that I want to just tell everybody, one of your friends is suffering. Check on them.
Yes.
They may not want to talk about it, but the fact that you are reaching out a hand or just an ear to listen, check on your friends. It will mean more than you know, and it might help take them out of a dark place that they're in because they are seeing that someone cares. So with 1 in 5 of us suffering, it helps to check on your friends.
I actually had have a friend at work, a new friend, just met him within the past year, and he seemed to be a little down. I initiated conversation. How you doing, man? And I could just tell, it gives them one of those kind of looks. And then he began to pour his heart out. We're standing right in the middle of the warehouse, and I'm just listening. Supervisors are walking by. It's like, yeah, I'll do that in a minute. Hold on. And come to find out, he's going to therapy. He was like, man, I'm only like 22. And I was like, look, as we mentioned earlier, it's best to get this, looked at early. I was like, you got a lot of time on this earth, man. He was like, man, I just shake and I just don't know what's going on. Talk to your therapist about it. It's great. I told him it's awesome. Men don't like to do this. We're supposed to be strong, and it's embarrassing for some reason, to go. And I pushed that point. So absolutely, Lydia, just doing a little check-in. How are you? I have people doing it for me. I do it, I just did it, I think
you
today,
did it for me yesterday, or what was it?
I mean, just checking in. How you feeling? How you doing? Because, well, I know that Lydia, suffers like, I do. But some of your friends you may not know. They may not, say anything. But it's just nice to check in. 1 in 5. That's a great point. One of your friends is
one of them.
One of them.
And that number is probably more like 1 in 4.
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Actually, yeah. 1 in 4. Yeah.
It's more like 1 in 4, because, and that's just like the 1 in 5 is based off of assuming everybody's reporting, which we know is not the case. And then how many people, because of their particular situations, will go undiagnosed or underdiagnosed. But yeah, it's probably more like 1 in 4. And something as simple as like a phone call, a text message, just, like a simple check-in, it does mean a ton. One thing that like I have discovered that I've turned into like a tool for like a daily check-in, is, of all things, Snapchat, because you get the little,
you get your streak
going. Yeah. So like it forces me to check in with people and be like, yeah, like today just kind of sucks. I don't have any pictures to send you. Like,
yeah, like I cover the camera, so it's just a black picture, right?
So, it has proven helpful. And then I'm like, oh, Jen hasn't sent me anything in a minute, but she just keeps sending me like blank screens. I'm going to give her a call and see how she's doing. It is something that has been effective, at least as far as like keeping in touch and checking in on a daily basis for me. I don't know for everybody else, but I like to keep my streaks. So
they are important.
You get lots of weird animal photos from me, but
But Crystal, thank you so much for coming on and all the research you did. And I'm sure that, well, I hope that at least one person will be helped by the research that you did. And thank you for taking the time out of your day for coming on and speaking with us. And thank you to everyone that, tuned in tonight. I know we had a couple new viewers, so, thank you for that. I'm glad we just showed up in a feed somewhere. But we are a bi-weekly podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're a bi-weekly podcast, Sunday nights, 8 p.m. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel to see our previous episodes that we've dealt with. And then we also have a Facebook group. We do keep it private so that there's not like trolls coming in. So if anybody wants to join that, just look up Dred the Stigma. But Otis, do you have anything?
This was a really important,
eye-opening.
Yeah, it was eye-opening. I couldn't believe the anorexic, stats. The only thing I really have to add is just to push the importance of what you brought up, Lydia, and checking on your friends. Do a little check-in. How you been? And even if they don't come out and talk to you, they know somebody cares. and that could be very important, and it could save a life. Who knows? Crystal, any final thoughts that you like to put out there before we close things down?
Well, first, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Sorry my connection wasn't the greatest, but we
It's
made it
It
work in the
happens.
end.
We
You get to see
powered
part of
through.
the kitchen. But just the numbers, if you like numbers like I do, the information's out there. Just know that, not all sources are created equally,
Mhm.
and double check your sources, make sure they're reliable. And obviously tune in because you guys did some great homework too. I'm very proud of you. Lydia's been turning into like a little research assistant lately too.
I want to point this out. I've been a nerd my whole life.
Right now it's finally coming in handy.
Right? My online, I tell this to everybody because people are like, oh my God, I want to meet you. You're so awesome. And I'm like, I assure you, my online personality is so much better than I am in person. In person, I'm very quiet. I'm very awkward.
I have RBF, like you will not want to approach me.
I do. I will wear headphones so people don't approach me. Even if nothing is on. Just, because
that's why I don't like earbuds. I get the ones with the cord. So people will
I have
to
the
me.
cord.
They see the cord, yeah.
I think it was 2 weeks ago, like I actually left my house, like a friend had invited me out. And it was a ton of people that I used to work with. So like you would think, hey, I can talk to all these people. No, I sat in a corner and we were at a bar and people are drinking, and I'm sober now and I've been sober for over a year. So for me, I was like, I'm not this person anymore. And it eventually just got to the point where I'm like, I just want my check for my nachos, and I was out of there. So I joke around a lot that I'm a lot cooler online than I am in person, and that took a lot longer to say than I anticipated. So I apologize for that.
I thank you, Brenda.
Yeah,
you know what?
I do want to.
I want to give a shout out to Brenda, because maybe a year and a half ago, I had deactivated my Facebook and I was gone. And I checked my PO box and I had a card from Brenda. And she had wrote me a card, and she just wrote me a card to check on me because she saw I wasn't there. So like that littlest thing meant so much. So thank you, Brenda. Like I still think about that card. Oh my God, why do I cry on every episode?
You got a streak.
I know. This is my streak, is tears. My streak. But yes.
Think of tears as a superpower. So like you're expressing the emotion. We're not about suppressing them here.
Sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
I was trying hard. I was like, I'm not going to cry. I'm like, we're doing a numbers episode. I'm not going to cry.
Cry on a statistics show.
Right? I love
those statistics. I mean, the more you delve into them, we'll give you something to cry about.
It really
does. You got that right.
We mentioned it was a real eye opener looking at all these numbers, and just to show like how many more people are suffering that we don't realize. So again, if you're
think about it, like unless you're doing a podcast about statistics on mental health, when was the last time you really delved in and did any research?
Right.
Yeah, you don't.
Most Americans haven't read a book since high school.
Yeah, I didn't even read them back then. It's probably not something to brag about, but
when I explain to young people nowadays that when I grew up before the days of Google, they're pretty like appalled. Like, how did we do anything or write papers? Like, there was no AI to write papers for us. There wasn't even Google to give us the answers.
The Dewey Decimal System. Nobody will kids these days have no idea what we're talking about. Like, we had to go to a library and look to where this book would be found and then get said book.
And if somebody already had it out.
And we had to write a bibliography stating what books we used. I don't even know, like, if high schoolers or even, middle schoolers have to do bibliographies anymore, like, for their
I
research.
doubt it.
Like, I think it would
I
literally just be websites.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all it would
Well,
be. Whole lot of .coms.
Right.
well, and I will say, so like we were talking about like that research bit. So like .orgs, .govs, and .edus are going to typically be a little bit more reliable than your .coms.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But
That is
there's
true.
some great research papers out there and whatnot. So download some PDFs. But yeah, I know that my 6th grade English teacher is so proud of me right now for talking about how important research is and checking your sources. Like, if there's anything that you take away, yeah, MapQuest.
That's like 5 pages of
How did anybody deliver pizza?
Well, I mean, remember, like, you weren't supposed to talk to strangers on the internet, let alone get in a car with one. Now you literally summon them.
Uber.
Yep.
But
My, how times change.
Right. But thank you again, Crystal, so much for coming on.
Yes,
And thank you for everyone that tuned in tonight. We had a lot of interaction, and we'd love to see that.
Yes.
Like I think I say it pretty much every episode, that even if what we talk about helps one person, then that is good enough for me. And so on that note, everybody, we will see you again in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I don't believe we have set a topic yet for 2 weeks from
I
now.
think we may talk about getting mental health care. Okay. We had mentioned that, but we'll finalize it on.
Yes.
You guys will be the first to know. But it's going to be another great one like this one was. Again, thank you, Crystal. And as Lydia said, I hope some of this maybe resonates with you. You got something from the stats. If you're doing your own research, please take Crystal's advice. Watch where you get it from. These numbers can be skewed, and going to more reputable places, like NAMI, check out the .orgs and things of that nature. I found that to be very true. I never realized that, but yeah, .coms with a com, I think stands for commercial, or no, I don't know. Anyway,
never thought about it.
Never thought about it.
Now I'm going to be Googling that.
Weird things, yeah.
We're not tech people. It's fine.
I'm not. We do paper notes, Otis. We do paper notes.
True story.
All right. Well, everybody have a great night. And if you are struggling, reach out 988. You don't even have to talk. You can just send a text.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Good night.